Good afternoon, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all for coming today. Appreciate very much your time. I want to thank also His Excellency, the Embassy of the Emirates in the United States, our colleagues and partners at Hudson for hosting us today, and again, all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules before the July 4th weekend to have what I am certain will be a fascinating discussion with His Excellency, culminating a successful tour, I'm sure, of the United States. The format today, very simply, in the hour that we have, after I provide His Excellency opening remarks, I'll start with a few questions, and then hopefully that'll give you time to formulate your own, and then we hope to open it up to yours. So you've got a little bit of time to think through what you'd like to ask. But without further delay, let me introduce His Excellency, and then we look forward to his opening remarks. As all of you know, he is the UAE's Minister of State for Foreign Trade, appointed in July of last year. And his purpose and portfolio is to attract the best talents, oversee the development of non-oil trade, and within those sectors, enhance investment climate, expand global partnerships. Obviously, one of the reasons, no doubt, he's here in the United States, one of our closest trading partners, and make sure that UAE continues to be a major business destination. He was also Minister of Climate Change and Environment, where he had a distinguished career in that field. He was the permanent representative of the UAE to the International Renewable Energy Agency, and responsible, as I understand it, for ensuring their move to their present location. So congratulations on that. And he was director of the Department of Energy Affairs and Climate Change at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Prior to that, in the private sector, he worked in Abu Dhabi Marine Area Operating Company and Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company, or Masdar. In renewable energy technologies, for sure. And before that, his history with the United States goes back to his time in education, where he received a bachelor's degree in petroleum engineering from the University of Tulsa. An interesting change, I'm sure, from your time in the Emirates, and a master's in business administration from the New York Institute of Technology. And so, without further delay, Your Excellency, we look forward to your opening comments, and then we'll begin.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting me here today with you. It was very productive few days here in the States. Speaking to the officials, private sector, companies, colleagues, and even the trade delegation that we're having, one of the largest trade delegation participating in Select US. We had the chance as well to showcase what we have achieved in the UAE when it comes to our economy in the last few years, and what we have even celebrated in the as the 50th anniversary last year on what we have accomplished. We're really glad that the results of the Abrahamic Accord is very concrete. We're seeing the results. Everyone was thinking that it's going to be a political agreement, but we're really hitting the ground on the main objective of it, which is the economic prosperity for the whole region, not only for both nations. The numbers are growing. The numbers are really showing that we're going toward the right direction, and I'm sure with this momentum, so many things are going to be harvested very soon. If you allow me, when I speak about the UAE economy, we managed to do major transformations. The economy has went through different stages to the level where we are now. Our dependence on oil and gas went down dramatically from almost 59.8% in 1979 to almost 28% last year. And this huge diversity that we did is through the comprehensive and holistic approach that we took in the country by the investment in infrastructure, the improvements, the continuous improvements of our legal system, as well as the openness of our markets and the openness of the attitude that we're welcoming the business people to the UAE. And we're going to continue. And as a country which has been hit by the pandemic, like many other countries around the world, and we're a few ministers and 3 ministers who've been mandated during at the middle of the pandemic to be one of the fastest recovery economy in the world and prepare ourselves for the upcoming 50 years. The numbers are showing that we're moving toward the right direction. Last year, we had a huge growth. The expectation from World Bank was around 2.1% for our GDP. We ended up by having 3.8%. We're aiming to double our economy now for the upcoming 10 years. And the doubling of our economy is going to be with this openness mind that we're having and ensuring that people, talents, the investors are the key driver of this movement forward. As part of our celebration for the last year, we launched a few initiatives. We called it the Project of 50th, where most of the sectors are going toward the economy. I mean, all initiatives are for the sake of the growth of our economy. A few of them are to opening new markets with 10% growth on an annual basis. We did the evaluation just 2 months ago. We already hit the target, and we exceeded that by 40% instead of the 10% in the new markets. We announced that we would like to sign bilateral CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreements, with 8 countries, at least as a first batch. Now we have 2 already with both India and Israel. We're signing one in 2 days from now with Indonesia. We're signing and concluding one with Colombia in the upcoming 2 to 3 weeks. And we're negotiating with a few other countries. So what we announced are on the ground, and we're moving quickly on the implementation of those CEPAs that we have signed. I'll come back to the Indian and the Israeli CEPA later on. We announced as well our main to focus on SMEs and entrepreneurship as one of the main drivers. Looking at the number of companies that we have, 96% of our companies are SMEs. I want to make sure that those companies are going to increase. The impact of them on our economy is going to be significant, and ensure that we either scaling up those companies. So we launched many of the initiatives by launching a soft loan financial mechanism through Emirates Development Bank, or through this market access that we're offering through the CEPA. The other projects which we were continuing is the huge investment in the space sector. We already reached Mars through the mission, the Hope mission, and the announcement of the new announcements to go to the moon, sending some of the astronauts to the moon, the Venus mission in 15 years from now. All of those are creating a new sector in the country, and there are already huge investments in the sector. So far, the investments reached $3 billion, but we're going to continue with this engagement partnership globally on this new sector in our region. But we're becoming one of the main leaders in our region as one of the main entry to this futuristic sector. The industry has been having a huge focus. We looked at what we have achieved in the last 10 years. The growth in the industrial sector is only 1%. Yes, we're not talking about the volume, but we're talking about the contribution of the industry in our economy. 1% for us is very minimal, and that's why now we're going aggressive. We want to double down on our industry contributions in our GDP. It's around 133 billion dirhams now, and we want to reach the 300 billion dirhams by 2030. So we're focusing heavily on sectors, the key sectors, ensuring that there is a supply chain, ensuring that there is an in-country value, and government procurements to ensure that we're supporting and taking some of the products that we produce locally. So that is a key sector which we know for sure will have a huge impact on our relation with Israel, for example, and India, where we're bringing the innovation, bringing some of the technologies, scale it up in the UAE, and we go to the wider range, a wider market from the UAE. For the first time, we have mandated as the Ministry of Economy to take the lead on the residency revamping. Residency is usually handled either by the social or the security entities. But because of this economic mindset that we want to bring on board, we've been asked by the leaders to lead on the whole revamp of the residency system. And from there, we expanded our golden visa, the 10 years visa, to broader stakeholders within the country, including the talents, the highly skilled people. We included the green visa, where we're granting 5 years visa to many of the talents as well, with the new conditions that they're going to be sponsoring themselves without being sponsored by companies. We relaxed many of the criteria by having those investors, families, anyone who's having the visa sponsoring their kids who are 25 years old instead of 18 years old before. Sponsoring their parents, students who are above 15, they can have part-time job in the country. We're welcoming as well international internship to the UAE. And we did some modification as well here and there on the freelancer visa, for example. It used to be on the free zone. Now they can operate from online. So those changes have been introduced based on this, the direct engagement between us and the private sector, because they're the main driver for any changes that we're introducing forward. So let me go back to the SEPA and dig into the backgrounds behind it. When we've been asked by His Highness to double our economy by 2030, one of the main factors that we took in consideration, how come we did not do it before? And we've been always waiting our colleagues at the GCC to move on. And we said, how come other countries managed to do it? Here we're talking about Israel, Indonesia, Chile, Switzerland. Those countries managed to double their economy by having many free trade agreements, which means that liberalization and opening the market is always is going to pay off on the numbers, on the GDP, as well as attracting more investments and talents to the country. So we took very bold decision that we're going to continue being part of the GCC negotiation, but we're going to open another track, the bilateral free trade agreements. Maybe the question that could be raised, why we started with India, not any countries around the world. India, in 20 years from now, they're going to be the fourth economic pole globally. And we want to be the Hong Kong of India for the upcoming few years. And we want to ensure that the growth which is going to happen in India is affecting indirectly the UAE's growth in our GDP. And that's why we tied up our economy to the India. In less than 3 months, in 88 days of negotiation, we managed to sign the deal. Everyone was questioning that it's going to be difficult. Usually the Indians are taking years to do so, but the relation played a major role because the mindset which we brought in the negotiation that this is a win-win situation, and anything that we're going to put on the table, we know that maybe some of the sectors, some of the manufacturers, factories are going to be affected, but in longer term is going to be an added value. We did major eliminations of our tariffs. Service sector is going to be booming in Indian market, and we know we're going to have a huge potential of investments even in the service sector within India. We developed very structured governance for dispute settlements, for any issues that could happen in the future, and we ensure that there is a less and less trade barriers between both countries, and this is the same thing which is applied in all other CBAs we were signing. We did an economic model to see the impact on our GDP. Impact of signing the CBA with India is going to have an impact of 1.7% on our GDP, create jobs of 140,000 jobs, highly skilled jobs. Will increase our exports by around $9 billion by 2030. We did the same thing with Israel. The liberalization is really high, more than 95%. And we did it in 4.5 months. The impact in our economy is going to be almost 0.1. It's very conservative because the relation is is less than 2 years, and we know the impact is huge. Speaking about the numbers of our relation, and that's why I said it's very conservative on the relation between us and Israel. In the last 2 years, the bilateral, the non-oil trade numbers reached $2.5 billion. Last year alone, 2021, the bilateral trade volume is $1.4 billion. The first quarter of this year, we exceeded $1 billion, which means that the number is clear that the relation really has a huge potential. We know for sure that with this momentum, there are so many things to be done together. We signed more than 150 either MOUs or agreements with Israel. Some of them have been already concretely seeing or showing some of the projects and the engagements. Some of them are not even in our radars because businesses, they don't like to speak about their revenues, etc. But we're really glad that we're providing this platform for direct engagements and networking and partnership between the business people. Some of the sectors are very clear. We're going to dig into it later on. But we see a huge potential. I do believe that we're going to exceed the 4 billion without the CEPA this year, but we're going to hit the 10 billion easily in the upcoming 2 to 3 years from now.
I appreciate that very much, Excellency, and the insight into the purpose and direction for the economy and your role in steering it in that direction, I think, is fascinating to all of us. Maybe the place to start is where you ended, on the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, the Free Trade Agreement with Israel. Can you take us behind the scenes on what happened and what unfolded in that very, very short period of time, the 4.5 months, as you say, in which it was negotiated? What were the major obstacles and impediments that had to be overcome? And as you already stated, there's enormous potential. And how does the agreement really unlock that potential?
There were not so many barriers because with the Abraham Accords, the trust has been already built. And as one of the first one of the first countries that signed the Abraham Accord with Israel, I think we already built very strong relations. And with the announcement of many projects, the momentum were very positive, and the overall environment was great. When we started the negotiation with Israel, or when we start approaching the colleagues within Israel, the response was very positive. But the slowness from the negotiators or the team who was going to conduct the negotiation, basically because of the other commitments that they have. And usually in the free trade agreements negotiation, people or countries are doing the priority list for the negotiation. So they don't want to disturb what's going on because it's heavy and time-consuming negotiation. And we do understand that they said we do have other commitments, and we don't want to disturb our even promises and the timeline which they have set to the others. But I think with the political interventions from both sides, we managed to kick it off in October. And the teams set very relaxed timeline for the negotiation, which is almost more than 6 months. And they said, there is no way, please don't talk to us. We'll not finish it within the period of Expo. And we told them that we want to do it in 6 months because we want to show the world that we are bringing different mindsets to the way that countries are negotiating FTAs and CEPAs. Taking years does not make sense because market is changing, people are changing, the political environments are moving to different directions. And why we in the negotiation of the free trade agreements were taking that very long period. And even the sector, there are always the new sectors coming along. So we did the first 2 rounds, and they were excellent, very high efficient. Based on evaluation, we said, yes, we're going to hit it even less than 6 months. We came after that, things has been relaxed. We said, no, we're progressing much quicker than expected, so let's slow down. Slowing down, it's putting pressure on us as a technical team because we start getting calls from the foreign affairs. How come things are not moving? How come things are not moving? And we start pushing the same pressure on our colleagues from Israel. Okay, please, if you want us to move, put the pressure on the other side because we're ready. Whenever they're ready, we're going to be ready. Until there was a summit between His Highness the President of UAE and the Prime Minister of Israel, when they talk very bold decision that both teams have to get together and get it done. And I got a call that the team has to be physically moving to Israel, and we did it at the last week of Expo, and we concluded the negotiation. The direction which I got from His Highness, don't come back until you conclude. So that was the main message which we sent to everyone, don't come back until we conclude. And we managed to do it before the end of Expo. So last day I was texting everyone, congratulations, we're done with the CEPA. Now we're going to move with the ratification process. So no real issues because the 2 economies are very similar to each other. The interests were there. We were very flexible from both sides, and we were looking at the bigger picture because we know that this is going to bring more opportunities to both economies.
No, absolutely. It's always good when your boss gives you clear and direct guidance, and there's no misunderstanding. You mentioned India and the importance of the relationship, and I think it's easy at one level to recognize it. When we projected out the benefits, the economic benefits for the Abraham Accords countries in the constellation, we saw a similar trend. that in reality, the connections to the European and African markets and the centrality of the Accord members is where the real economic dividends were. It's the relationships that exist outside the region. How do you see, in the opposite sense, Israel's relationship and its proximity to Europe, particularly from an energy and a food security standpoint? How do you see that being a benefit to Israel or to the UAE as you achieve your economic goals?
Well, one of the analysis or one of the angle which we took in consideration while doing the whole visibility study of Israel, the number of agreements, their real agreements with the world, and the percentages of their exports outside. 70% of the Israeli exports to the countries which they signed an FTA with. And we were looking at Israel as a gateway to Europe because we don't have an agreement with Israel with the Europeans so far, and they managed to do an excellent job in attracting either R&D facilities or innovation funds and innovation investors to Israel, and we know that for sure we're going to capitalize on these capabilities which they have. The other thing which we saw as a complementarity to the ongoing efforts between both nations is the efforts in energy as well as water and agriculture. We're having the same challenges, and because of the challenge that Israel faced, they managed to come up with technologies which is going to bring an overall value to the whole region, because we do share the same weather conditions, same challenges within the surrounding neighborhood. In energy, there is an investments in oil and gas. Mubadala is doing one of the largest investments from our side. We're in serious discussion on renewable energy. We had this announcements between UAE, Jordan, and Israel, where we're going to invest in both projects to produce water using some of the renewable energy projects that is going to produce in Jordan. So those trilateral projects are going to play a role as well as far as an outcome from Abrahamic Accord, and play a role as well in their penetration of their trade products to the Europeans because of the carbon footprint that is going to be required in their relation. So we're thinking about the complexity of the trade, the complexity of energy, and the needs of the region while having these partnerships and deals with Israel.
Absolutely, and I think the remarkable progress on the Jordanian front of the agreement, and we look forward to the results of it. When you consider now that there are air and maritime connections between the Accord countries, between the Emirates and Israel, and more broadly to Asian and European markets, looking ahead even beyond that, what would the potential connections on an overland or ground transportation option be? So improving the movement of goods and materials from the Emirates overland to Israel and vice versa. Obviously, there are political complications, but do you see the economic benefit of that being a very compelling argument? And what would the results of that be in terms of trade potential?
Connectivity is always a key factor in any trade relation and any economic relation. With the current direct flights, if you allow me to start with the flights, the people going and coming back change the perception that we used to have about each other. Understanding more the Israelis, understanding more their society and the direction internally, and vice versa. We had a huge number of tourists from both sides. This builds on the trust that we want our people from both sides to have. And then the investments and the trade is going to follow. We just had Emirates Airline having the direct flights last week, which means that the connectivity is going to be boosted. And we know for sure that there will be many of the business people going and visiting Israel and vice versa and explore more business opportunities. This is linked to what we have achieved as well during the pandemic, if you allow me to link things here. Many of the visitors who were trying to get to the UAE before the pandemic and we couldn't. And during the pandemic, because of the lockdown in their countries, we invited them to come for a few days and see the country. When they come and visited us, they decided to extend their stay, and then eventually they bought real estate and moved some of the businesses in the country. Let's not undermine the connectivity between countries, because it's a key factor on attracting the investments and trade between both of us. Logistically, yes, there is a discussion between both. The logistics entities and relevant authorities within Israel with our main logistics companies, DP World and Abu Dhabi ports. And there is already a discussion. We do see a value of complementing each other, especially that the common market is Africa, which we can complement and work with each other, and work with each other on Europe. And we can take many of the technologies, scale it up in the UAE, and go together to Asia. So complementarity is already there. Things are happening, and we just want to make sure that we, as the governments, are making sure that the enabling platforms are already there.
Absolutely. My last question, and then look forward to opening up to others. Obviously, this past year has seen some turbulence in global markets from an energy standpoint, from a consumer price index standpoint, affecting food security, no question. And I think most estimates project that that's going to last for some time to come. What adaptations are you and the Emirates making economically to deal with it? And how does the relationship between Accord's countries help? And you mentioned already one area in agricultural cooperation, but what steps are being taken now to prepare for that?
Well, we worked during the pandemic on the health sector, especially on the equipments, and ensure that some of the health equipment supplies are either in both markets or to the countries that we're friends with. But in terms of the engagements and in terms of the bilateral relations, our stem cells center in Abu Dhabi is already in Haifa-based centers on the topic. So health sector is already there. We're having a dedicated office within Israel for one of our leading digital company called G42, which leads many of our efforts on health and many other sectors, working directly with the relevant teams, businesses, partners within Israel. Renewables, clean energy is key, no matter how the energy is sufficient. We're always going to look for more and more, because the backbone of any economy is the energy. And we want to make sure that there is a diversity. And we're working as well on the technology of the field. Agriculture has been there, but not only the agriculture, because the water is more important. Now, we're working with many of the Israeli companies on ensuring that we can harvest the water from humidity. How can we bring more efficient technology to the market? And how can we expand on the work that has been already achieved on the agriculture sector within Israel? Space has been mentioned earlier in my remarks. And I think the sky is the limit. There's so many things to be done together. It's just a matter of us ensure that people are talking to the right people. Last thing which I want to mention, and this has been always a remark or a comment which I share with my dear friend, Ambassador Amir Haik, the Israeli ambassador in Abu Dhabi. Many of the delegation came to the UAE thinking that it's easy to get money and go. We're very shrewd business people. So we want to make sure they talk to the right people. And we talk to the right people in Israel. And that's the key aspects of the successful relation. And if we really want to see concrete, strong projects, ensuring the right partnerships is happening.
No question. Undergirds all successful business ventures, not just in the Middle East. So let me afford the opportunity for those that we've in attendance today for questions for His Excellency. And I think we've got a microphone as well if it's needed. But Fred, you first hand I see, so you have got the first question. Please, if you do, when you ask questions, state your name and your affiliation, if you would. Here we go.
I'm Fred Fleitz with the America First Policy Institute. Your Excellency, I'm wondering how the war in Yemen has affected the UAE economy, especially the missile attacks by the Houthi rebels and Iranian terrorist proxy over the last year, and can the U.S. do more to help defend the UAE against these attacks?
Well, the attack did not mess up our plan. We're continuing. People, next day, they went back to their businesses. Nothing has been disturbed. We do have very strong military forces which managed to reduce the impact on the country. How the war in Yemen, how those are affecting the economy, our economy is growing, and the numbers are already showing that. the growth which we had last year. This year, the expectation is going to be even much better than the last year. Yesterday, I was reading one of the intelligence reports on our economy. I think we're going to exceed the 5% growth this year, which show how resilient our economy, and we don't get affected by such small things which goes around us. The alliances between us and the state is very crucial. They're very strategic ally, and we always going to continue looking for more collaboration partnerships, even in the defense on security matter.
Any other questions for His Excellency?
Hi, I'm a research analyst at APAC. My name is Talia Rosenberg. You mentioned that a key aspect in keeping the trade going is making sure that the right people are talking to each other. With the upcoming elections in Israel and possible changes in ministry positions, how will you ensure that you maintain those relationships and that the right people will continue speaking to each other?
Well, the government relations are not built on people, are built on system, and are built with the entities. So the entities are going to always be there, no matter how people are changing. But at the same time, we do have a direct relation with the private sector, who are the main engine of the growth within Israel and the more investments in Israel. Those direct relations between our government, semi-government, private sector with the private sector in Israel are going to continue, no matter how is the political system within Israel and what's going to happen in the upcoming few days. So we're going to continue no matter who are going to be there, because we already had an engagement with the system, and we're going to continue to ensure that we're fulfilling the objective of Abrahamic Accord, the economic prosperity and the peaceful region with this new engagement.
And certainly we've seen in just a short period of time the relationship exists. There have been countless elections already. So the turbulence, if you haven't been able to ride that roller coaster yet, then you'll certainly have more opportunities. But a great question. Next one, right behind.
Hello, Your Excellency. My name is Jordan Hirsch. I'm the General Counsel of the Paul E. Singer Foundation, incoming. I'm wondering what your views are on the prospects for countries potentially entering the accords, and particularly for expanding economic opportunity for the UAE as a result of that. I'm sure you might not be able to mention specifics, but if there are particular sectors you'd be focused on that would be of interest in terms of that economic expansion.
Well, I'm sure there will be many countries joining the Abrahamic Accord, without mentioning names of the countries, but they are already seeing, we're already seeing many of the interest from the region and from the Islamic countries who don't have an official relation or a diplomatic relation with Israel. So the expectation is high that many countries are going to join. How we're going to make sure that those countries are benefiting, or the members of the Abrahamic Accord are benefiting from this relation of the UAE? One of the things which we added in our SIPA with Israel, that we welcome any members of the Abrahamic Accord to join automatically the SIPA. So it's going to be moving from a bilateral to multilateral SIPA. The clause or the article is clear, and some of the colleagues from Bahrain are looking at that seriously. And we really hope that they're going to join the Abrahamic Accord. Some of the sectors which are going to be an interest, energy is always an interest. Health is always an interest. Agriculture and food is something which Israel has been pioneering in, and we know for sure there will be a potential of work. Logistics, trade, finance are all an interest for all of us. And again, just matter of having showing the importance of those sectors to the right people, so things are going to be more concretely moving forward.
And add too, as someone involved in the original negotiations, it's important to note the Emirates' strong role in the original formation of the Accords and getting additional members. So not only the first to make, which will coming up on the second anniversary here in August anyway, but instrumental in achieving support and participation from other countries, and doubtless will play a pivotal role going forward. Great question. Thank you for asking. Any other questions for His Excellency? Right. So as I understand it, the last event in the United States before departure back, so hopefully you had a successful visit. Hopefully it was a pleasant and productive visit. It's an honor to have hosted you here today. We're grateful again to our hosts at Hudson Institute, and those of us at the Abraham Accords Peace Institute are grateful for your time, Excellency, and for that of the embassy staff, who always are excellent colleagues to work with, and grateful for all of you participating today. But with that, we'll provide you the opportunity, sir, for the last comments and closing remarks.
Thank you so much for hosting us. The number of delegation who's participating in USTR and other delegations who are in the States this week and throughout the last few months as well reaffirms our commitment to United States as an ally and a strategic partner. And we're always going to look forward for more business opportunities and economic opportunities between all of us. So let's continue this strong relation and let's explore more to the benefits and the value of our own people. Thank you.
Excellency, thank you. Please join me in thanking His Excellency.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming today. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir.
It's a great honor. Thank you again for taking the time, sir.